So what we're presenting and requesting for action on first reading is just an adjustment to the allotment that was in the policy manual last year. These funds are for comprehensive support and improvement schools, so CSI schools in the state. The funds originate from a set aside for school improvement that the federal government gives us the ability to set aside up to 7% for school improvement. The funds that we're speaking of today is basically 4% of the 7%, which equates to about 17 million. So last year we had identified as comprehensive support and improvement schools 109 schools. For this current school year, that number has been reduced to 105 due to 3 schools that are closing, 2 charters, 1 school within Guilford County, and then we had 1 school that was restructured, so that's why we've gone from 109 to 105. But if you look at the adjustment to the allotment policy, which was by attachment, basically what has changed, so there's 2 changes to what we provided you last year. 1, a change to the formula, and 2, something that had to do with the ISD. The formula for these funds last year were that basically we would assign $50,000 to every CSI school identified in the state, and then the remaining balance after the $50,000 was taken out of the roughly 17 million would be distributed by ADM. And that was distributed to both CSI low performing schools and CSI low graduation rate. We didn't have schools identified in the previous cycle, which was 2015 through 18, in the priority school cycle for low graduation rate. So one thing we needed to take into consideration in asking you to consider is that the first adjustment to this policy is that if any school that is a CSI low performing school, they would get the exact same formula as last year, 50,000 base, and then per ADM school-wide. However, for those schools that are identified as CSI low graduation rate, due to the fact that that identification from the federal government is identified in 9 through 12, we're asking for an adjustment to the allotment policy that for ADM, the ADM is only counted in grades 9 through 12, since that's hence where the identification comes from. So that's change number 1. And then the second change we're asking is that in the first year of the cycle, we were asked to put into the allotment policy that any school that was newly identified that was from the ISD or a lab school, the portion of the formula that was ADM was 2 times the ADM. If you look on the allotment policy, that has been struck through, so that would no longer be part of the formula. So those are the changes to this policy we're asking for you to consider action on first reading. And the reason for why we're asking for that is because we want to get these funds out to our school districts. Normally we get them out in October, but we have an opportunity to get them to these at-risk schools as early as basically 2 weeks from approval, if that's what you decide. That's the presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments on this presentation? All right, not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you.
This will be, as Dr. Vecchione said, this will be a matter on action on first reading tomorrow for the purpose of getting the money out to the schools. So that's around before we start on this. I, like you, I suspect, have received several inquiries and comments about this particular issue, and I think it's probably important to set a little bit of context around this for everybody's sake, so we start from common ground in the discussion. The legislature asked for this report, and our due date is September the 15th. I think the cover shows September 1st, but the due date now is September 15th. That got altered a little bit, and I believe the reason it was asked for is there were some instances where some legislators stated some concerns about certain schools starting that did not appear to them necessarily to be in compliance with the school calendar law, and that was sort of the impetus for getting some additional information so they would know more authoritatively what the status was for schools and start times around the state. As we looked into this and as we've gotten some responses, and I really want to say thank you to the superintendents who've responded. There have been several, and there's at least one I know is out in the audience, if not more. But there are a number of people who are very interested, and I'd say superintendents across the board are interested. Dr. Miller, you can confirm if I'm onto something there or not. but there is a great deal of interest in this, and so I think one thing to set context appropriately, I think looking at the statute, and Eric Snyder sent out an email to everyone last night, hopefully everyone had a chance to look at it. The references made on opening and closing dates, it sets those dates that we're all pretty familiar with. It has a phrase in there, except for year-round schools. And the question has arisen, how are year-round schools defined for purposes of this statute, or are they defined clearly in other statutes? There are clearly references in other statutes that make some, from which one could impute something about what a year-round school would be, or, for example, length of contracts and that. And there's some sense of confusion perhaps that exists about that. The interpretation I think the General Assembly would give it at this point pretty clearly is nothing stops you from providing additional services, but that would be something that would be supplemental and not constituting part of the school year. But I think there are a lot of districts that believe they've constructed their program during the rest of the, for example, summer, in a way that it would meet continuing providing of services, and certainly there's been some confusion upon that point. At different times, some districts on this list, and the list really focused on is C, the findings. There's a list of waivers, and then there's a list of specific schools. But in subsection C, I think it's the list. There are several districts, 13 in total, where they have engaged on in having school start dates that are early, but believe they fall within a year-round school definition. That would that's subject to a lot of debate, and it's not our purpose to, ultimately, we can't resolve that debate. That's, we have taken a position as a board that we believe that there should be greater flexibility with the start and end dates of the schools, and we have, I think, brought to the state legislature to their attention on several occasions. That's the position of the board, and certainly I know we did again this year, but that has not yet caused a movement in the language of the statute. So the statute that we're being asked to provide a report on is the one we just looked at. And so from the district standpoint, and many of you have received, I expect, some letters from various of the districts, and some of them detail with some great pains the efforts they went through in terms of setting up in the community what their calendar would be. Spent a lot of time planning it. Many instances sought to get some form of advice about whether or not it met with the notion of being a year-round school, and the kinds of things that are done include tapping into local resources, in terms of all local money in many of these districts, tapping into community foundations and or corporate benevolences in order to provide transportation for every child that needs additional assistance or resources during the summer, and provide enrichment opportunities for those who want it of all the other students, and provide for that both transportation and some meal support for both those things. And so as a result of that, some of the superintendents who worked very hard thought they asked the right questions, and have put in programs that, in close consultation with their community, very strongly believe are in the best interest of their children in the community. And are used to getting A+ in everything they do, because that's who our superintendents are. Again, Dr. Miller, you can verify that for me. But because of that, being found in a report, and we sent the report out last week, preparing it using the data that DPI had, felt like they're sort of being potentially saying they did something wrong when they really feel like they took the steps not to do something wrong, and they're very much devoted to doing the right thing for their kids and for their community, and they're supported in their community for it. So that's probably a long way of getting around, but trying to be a kindly way of getting around to the fact that this is a difficult issue. It's a hard issue for the districts that are dealing with this, and certainly there's a lot of well-intended efforts that have gone into it. So as Alexis gets ready to give the report, and I should say Alexis has been the one charged with gathering all the data, and so for anyone who's had concerns about it, this would be the classic, we appreciate her wonderful services and has Alexis is not the one who created or instituted or initiated this effort, but rather has been doing a good job gathering the information that we've received. But I think it might be helpful, and I would ask the board to consider as we hear the report, that under C, findings, we might put in some language that's a little more descriptive about the efforts that have gone on, so it's not put in quite the terms it's put in, that that although DPI may not agree, we may not put it that way. We may put it more in terms of that, I'd say more in the positive terms of what the districts have done and what their understanding was, and if they're mistaken, it was unintended and their focus was in the right place. I think we need to maybe find different words to make the report. We may have to make the report regardless, depending upon how we view the year-round school issue, but I think certainly the interpretation that was made in receiving the data without a waiver, it's not unreasonable to interpret it as not meeting the year-round schedule, although certainly the districts in good faith thought that they were in many instances. So this should be a really easy report and should just be able to dash it off, should have the dates and send it in, but it's not, and I don't want any of us to kid ourselves. It's just one that's really a hot topic for superintendents, and in a lot of our communities it's a hot topic, and so we need to be sensitive to that and thoughtful about it is what I would ask as we go forward. So with that all too long a prologue, Alexis, if you could now give us a report. Hopefully it'll be easier for you to give now.
Yes, hopefully this is not the highlight of my career.
Nor mine.
Yes, this legislation was passed at the end of July, which requires the school districts to respond to the superintendent of state board on the start and the end dates of their instructional calendars. And also, if they started prior to that August 26th date, to provide the statutory reference. It is being asked for action on first read because the legislation actually states that the report is due September 1st, but we requested an extension due to the legislation was passed at the end of July. So we've got until September 15th to provide this over to them. It is only a requirement for the LEAs and not the independent public schools, which include the lab schools and charter schools, etc. All the school districts did respond, and as you can see, the report is divided up into sections of the law, as well as some of the exemptions and waivers that are in the law for those beginning and start dates, and then those school districts which started prior to their allowable date, and the number of schools that are in each one of those school districts. We also had 3 individual schools that it wasn't school-wide. The first list of the 13 school districts, they were school district-wide start dates. There are some schools that are individual, they're kind of exceptions of their school districts that were prior to the start date. The exceptions really come into 3 categories. Those school districts that believed that the calendar that they had approved by their local board was in fact a year-round, as Mr. Duncan had explained. There were also school districts which had started, they'd put their calendar in line with the community college calendar to facilitate the instructional program with their dual enrollments. And then there is the situation where you have an individual school that shares a campus with the school that has an exemption. And so to be efficient with their staffing and their transportation, they set that calendar that was for the school that was not eligible for an exemption, but they set that at the same calendar as the school with the exemption. So those are the 3 main categories of those that are included in the report.
So, questions, comments, thoughts, all welcome. And I do welcome any thoughts about my suggestion that perhaps we modify the language under C to provide a much fuller explanation about what was taking place in terms of the findings for certainly most, if not all, of these districts.
I would be in
Just can't.
support of doing that. Changing our.
I agree with that. A couple of questions, maybe I missed this in your presentation, Alexis, and you do just unbelievable work on short timelines. So I'm looking at the report and I'm thinking, how did you do what you have? Will this report be expected again next year?
It is an annual report. The timeline shifts a little bit so that the school districts are required to report in April. And then I guess the report goes after in the next month. So it'll be an annual report.
Do you have any idea the reasoning behind the report, the rationale for the report? I mean, goes to the General Assembly, do data collectors or analysts study it for some kind of what is the reason for it, I guess is my question.
I think, well, most of the reports, and this is part of the Uniform Education Reporting System general statute now, I think that there was kind of questions from legislators. We had a couple years where legislators were interested in the school time that they start, so we now have a UERS report for the start and release time. So every year we have to send over, actually I don't think we actually send that over, but we have to make sure we have the data of every school, what time they start and what time they end. This year, as Mr. Duncan had explained, there was some inquiry from some legislators as to school start dates. We had some citizens that were inquiring about specific school districts that had started prior to the legislated date. So I can't speak for them, but I'm thinking that the two things are connected.
Thank you. And Mr. Duncan, to your point about the ambitious efforts between the LEAs and other partners to agree and develop and agree upon and vote on a calendar, I agree, because I've heard from a few of my superintendents in the Sand Hills Region 4, and they discussed, and they should, I suppose, always do this regardless of the calendar, is how hard they worked with their community colleges to create alignment between the school calendar and the calendar for the community colleges. So there was a lot of collaboration going on, and I applaud them for that.
Dr. Miller?
I agree that we probably need to rewrite the piece that makes it sound like DPI is presenting an opinion. Could we say something like, instead of making it negative, like you said, say something that the DPI, the state board, is presenting the information requested, including the rationale provided by the LEAs, rather than saying that we don't agree with the rationale given.
We've probably heard from enough of the LEAs that we could summarize the rationale, because it's there's a consistency about what we've received in terms of what they're doing. It's trying to align the school year with time breaks and with some of the things that Alexis was referring to, including schedules of their other schools, community colleges, and then also having intercession periods thereafter and having them lined up for that.
Right. I just think if we present it as here are the facts, excluding any opinionated statements, that we will be better off. It's just my opinion, since we're talking about opinions.
Well, and I think that heading on C, findings, is pretty neutral.
Yes.
So it's not like you have to change the heading, it's just some language. Yes?
I think a lot of the focus is on the column that says DPI's comments. That's what we're talking about. And do those by statute need to be there? Are we required to make those comments?
So no, sorry, I was wondering who was responding. So apparently, so the report requires the school district to provide the statutory reference, which for a lot of them, apart from the year-round, we actually pre-populated and then requested the superintendents to kind of confirm on that, but we did not do that for year-round, and so they provided it's difficult to provide the statutory reference clearly with a year round because you're referencing the entire school calendar bill, 115C 84.2. So it could be anything within that. So that's the only thing. It's not always clear as to what exactly the superintendents were referring to when they have it in there. I mean, you could assume, but to answer your question, no, any conclusions are not required.
Which would, I think, support Dr. Miller's suggestion of how it be phrased.
Yes, sir.
Other, I think we can try to do some rephrasing overnight so people can look at it and see if they're
Yeah.
satisfied with that, so we can try to finalize the report. And as much as Ms. Schaus has enjoyed this project, she might like to see if we can move forward past it at this point. So why don't we try to work on that? Yes.
Yeah, as much as I like Dr. Miller's comment about just stating facts, I do think this is an opportunity. Our superintendents have been conscientious and a bit courageous in trying to work within the law for what's in the best interest of students. There are others who, rightfully so, will advocate for a different calendar for their best interest. It's up to us to lift up what's in our students' best interest. And this item squarely puts the calendar in our students' best interest. So maybe it's an addendum or in some other part of the report, but I feel strongly that this board needs to take a clear stand for our students, which is exactly what I see these superintendents doing.
I think
I
that's
agree with the chairman, and
Yeah.
perhaps in the LEA rationale, that would be a good place for the district to list that. I think many of the districts did a tremendous amount of work within the community and with the industry and the community, parents and everyone in that community, those communities and those districts would agree that this calendar is in the best interest of the children. So
I agree. I noticed that in addition to you, we have at least two other superintendents in the room. It would not be a harmful thing if you got together and maybe drafted something for the LEA rationale for the board to look at, if you can do that this afternoon collectively. I know everyone has written letters that are very, very full and thoughtful letters, but they're not a quick summary, which is what probably we'd be looking for in the report. A quicker summary is what we'd be looking for in the report. And I agree with the chair and was gonna add, we have advocated for this before. This, if anything, provides further, when perhaps an unintended consequence of asking for this report is it provides further rationale for us to continue to advocate for allowing the calendars to be more situated to the local needs to best serve and help our students. I say that knowing it's a complicated issue, and I know there's some strong feelings about the issue, but we have felt that way in the past. We always feel that students come first, and perhaps this is a good reminder to us if we needed one, getting the responses we've received. Are there other thoughts on this? We'll try to get something put together so that by tomorrow we have a little bit of a revised report to submit, if that's all right with everyone. Thank you very much. All right, our next item is an update on contracts. We have the executed contracts report, and we have the planned contracts report. Are there any questions about either of those? We don't have any contracts before us this month for, that would require board approval. All the executed contracts are under the amount, under the board policy. Some of the planned contracts, at least one of the planned contracts is substantially over the board approval amount, and so please look at those. So if in the event you have discussions, because at some point they'll become more than just planned contracts, so I want you to be ready for that when that occurs. Any questions on any of those contracts for now? Yes, please.
I don't have a question. I just want to recognize that one of the contracts is actually a grant we're receiving, and just want to thank the Belk Foundation for their partnership. They're paying for a contractual partnership with UPD, a consulting firm, which is going to help our K-3 literacy unit look at their scope of work, prioritize, focus, and kind of get in a place where they can best meet the needs of the pretty ambitious K-3 agenda we have in the state. So thanks
Yes.
to the Belk Foundation for that partnership.
Thank you for lifting that up. All right, our next item is the updated DPI vacancy report, and I think Melissa Warner's here to review that report with us. Welcome.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to walk you through the report, and I made it this time. I got stuck last time. I'm here. If we could advance to the next slide, please. Oh, do I have it? Oh, that's my fault. Okay. Okay, I'm challenged today. There we go. So as you guys requested, you wanted to see prior month and current month, so you can kind of see some of the changes that are going on regarding our hiring process. So we've broken it down to, if you look at the State Board of Education in the month of July, we had 3 vacancies. The month of August, we continue to have 3 vacancies. The Deputy Superintendent of District Support, in July, we had 49 vacancies. This month, we have 46 vacancies. Deputy Superintendent of Operations, we had 25 in the month of July. We have 24 now. Deputy Superintendent of of Innovation, we had 9 in July. We have 13 now. Deputy Superintendent of Early Education, we had 9. This month, we have 6. Superintendent's Office, we had 14 last month. We have 12 this month. So the total vacancies between the State Board and DPI are 104 this month. It's 109 last month. As you can see, those numbers don't look a little kosher there in the bottom, but what happens is we have retirements, or we have people who are transferring to new roles within DPI or getting promotions, so it doesn't net us reducing the number of vacancies that we do have, even though we've had significant amounts of recruitment work. Then now we're going to take a look at the residential schools by school. So in the month of July, GMS had 9 vacancies, and now they have 7. Overall, for the residential schools in July was 51 vacancies. Now there are 42 vacancies. The West had 20 vacancies in July, 18 vacancies as of August. And ENCSD had 22 last month and currently have 16. NCAT had 3 in July and currently have 2 positions vacant. So overall total for schools and for DPI and the State Board, there was 163 openings last month. There are 137 openings this month. At the bottom here, we wanted to note you guys, to let you know that we do have a lot of temporaries working within the organization. And a lot of them are working against positions that we are looking to recruit to fill. The significant jump is specifically regarding the NCVPS teachers that were added to our payroll as temporaries. They no longer are part of Temporary Solutions, so that's why that number increased significantly, because we took them on in the month of August, and now we're paying them as temporaries. So let's look at a breakdown here so you can kind of see, as you know, if we just provided you with those numbers of, we had 167 last month, we have 140 something this month, it's kind of hard to say, well, that doesn't seem like a lot, but there's a lot of movement. I want you to kind of understand where things are and where those open positions are. So the total vacancies, again, 163 last month. This month we had 137. So positions with no recruitment activity, last month we had 53. This month we have 37. So you can see, y'all, we've got a lot of new leadership here, a lot of people excited about what their roles are, and they're really taking, the initiative to really get out there and recruit and push these positions and get them filled. So we're very happy in partnering with them in doing so. We have, last month, 17 positions were posted. As of when I did the report, we have 15 current positions posted. As you know, guys, it's very fluid. So this is a snapshot of a moment in time. This could change within hours of each other. So if you went out and looked on the website right now at Office of State Human Resources, it might say that DPI had 25 positions posted. But as of when I did this report, that's what the numbers that were posted. Positions in screening, we have 15 positions in screening last month. We currently have 1 position in screening, and what that means is that the job has been posted, the job is closed, and we are looking through the applications and matching them based on the requirements so that we can refer them to the hiring managers. Positions in interviewing, last month we had 32. This month we have 41 that we have referred candidates to the hiring managers, and they're currently going through those candidates and setting up interviews to make the selection. Positions in salary administration, last month we had none at this time. This month we have 3 currently. When I left the office a few minutes ago, we actually got 6 more in today. So you see how those numbers do change quite quickly. Last month we filled 17 positions. This month we filled 42 positions. So we've really been working hard. The hiring manager's been doing a great job in getting those positions filled and making those offers for us. Positions preparing to post. So last month we had 8. And preparing to post means that we're trying to finalize the job descriptions with the hiring managers. We've gotten all the paperwork in. We just hadn't quite gotten them to the point that we can get them out there for applicants to apply. And this month, at this time, we had 4. Positions on hold, last month we had 10 positions on hold. This month we have 12 positions on hold. And that could be for various reasons, for reclassification or trying to understand what the needs are, redeveloping or redoing job descriptions and things like that. Now, positions with OHR spec issues, you guys know we're going through the class and comp project. So we have a few that have some spec issues that we really need to work with them on. And it's really solely based on their timeline as far as when they will work on those for us. They have certain classifications during certain months. And so last month we had 3, and this month, luckily, we only have 1. So we've made some progress there working with them. Offers pending last month. In July, we had 8. And this month, we have 5 offers that we're waiting on to get acceptance from. In August, for last month, the total hires, we had 17. This month, we had 42 hires. We had 6 retirements in July. We had 3 retirements this month. And then resignations, we had 6 resignations in July. And in August, we had 11 resignations.
So one question before we open up for
Yes, sir.
questions and comments. On the temporaries, we have the 786, which come from the issue arising out of the virtual school, plus the 136 that are currently with us. And as I add those 2 up, I get to 922, which leaves 172 less than the 1094 number shown for August. So can you account for
Yes, sir.
why that difference comes? Please do.
Yes, sir. That was my error. I'm sure that was my error, and I'll go back and reconfirm those numbers for you and provide an update for you.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was probably just a typo
Okay.
error on my end, sir.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions or comments on the report? Thank you. I know your office is working very hard, so thank you for the hard work that you're putting in, Chair Davis.
Just to add, Ms. Warner, you've made a number of improvements in our HR services, and this is just one example of the things you've done. I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
This is much greater visibility and understanding into how these positions are filled than we've had in the past, so thank you. One other thing we might raise for your consideration, we brought up last month, is it would be of interest, I know it's a reporting challenge, but to know how long it takes to go from,
Time to fill, sir?
yes,
Sure. I'll be happy to provide that information for you. As you know, with the budget not passing and the way we have to enter our actions into the system, it makes it hard for us to create that report right now. But as soon as the budget is passed, it'll make it easier so that we have all our data in and I can provide you with the correct information. So I'll be happy to provide that for you.
thank you, appreciate
And I wanted to let you guys know, since I wasn't here last time, Catherine may have mentioned this before, but we have added 2 additional folks to our HR team. Our benefits person, she's been here about 7 or 8 weeks, and we have a new recruiter, and she's been here about 5 weeks. And she's really high energy and excited, and she started working with some of the hiring managers so that we can position ourselves to be more strategic partners with our hiring managers and our folks out there, so that we can better improve on this process. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 consent items for tomorrow. One is, ironically, the State Board of Education waivers of state laws or rules granted to local education agencies. This is a report to the General Assembly. It's waivers with respect to class size and waivers with respect to calendar. So, spending a lot of time on calendar at the VisOp committee. The second report is my personal favorite every year, which is a state agency mobile device report. It reports on all our mobile devices and what the monthly cost and the annual cost is. And I'm also pleased to report that in working through this, Catherine Johnson indicates with the advances of technology, she believes there may be some ways to even reduce this cost further, and that's the intent and the work that's going on to make sure that happens as we go forward. And finally, on that, in the same area, Catherine's also working very hard and putting together budget documentation for the board to be able to have a good handle on that, both for the past budget and as we move into the development of the next budget. And I think has a report coming up next month, or next month, to work on, to help us work through budget issues and have a full understanding where the budget sits. So thank you for that work as well. And that completes our report. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Vice Chair Duncan. And I'd also like to offer my thanks to board members, advisors, and our entire DPI staff and others for participating in today's meeting. In particular, I'd like to thank and welcome our 2 new student advisors, Meredith Gaskell and Nate Kolk-Tomberlin. We'll more formally welcome you tomorrow, but we're so glad you're part of our team, and we look forward to your contributions to our work. So welcome. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to go into closed session, and note for the audience and online listeners that following closed session, the September 4, 2019 meeting will adjourn immediately. So at this time, I'll ask for that motion.
I move that the State Board of Education go into closed session to consult with our attorneys to discuss personnel matters and other attorney-client privilege matters, including United States Educational Technology Purchasing Alliance versus North Carolina State Board of Education and North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, Amplify Education, Inc. versus North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and Hoke County versus State of North Carolina and North Carolina State Board of Education.
There's a motion by Mr. Duncan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. White. Dr. Townsend Smith, will you call the roll to capture the vote?
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Kim?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. White? Yes. Mr. Chastain?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes. Motion carries. We will start closed session at 4 p.m.